And thank you, Deputy Secretary, for joining us for this first fireside chat.
My pleasure.
You know, this is a new initiative here within SACNAS and an attempt to integrate the students, and as Greg said, we always look to innovation, and so we thank you for participating in this new effort. You know, as Greg mentioned, and knowing SACNAS, this is an ideal situation in that your department deals with a lot of issues that face and plague our communities and have for generations. And so this is a unique opportunity for us to talk about that. So as Greg mentioned, like myself, you're a native New Mexican and a proud New Mexico State Aggie, as we had a chance to discuss. I wore my ASU Sun Devil tie today by chance. I should have worn my Aggie tie, so I apologize for that. But tell us a little bit about your life growing up in New Mexico and your decision to enter chemical engineering, which is where you received your bachelor's.
Sure. Thank you very much, Gabe. I appreciate the opportunity and the time that we got to spend together rehashing tales of New Mexico State, et cetera, which we won't go into anymore here. But I appreciate the opportunity to give some background, because I think it is pretty similar to a lot of the students that are here today. I don't think I was focused on a particular science career-oriented career or an engineering career when I went to school. My goal was to do as well as I could in school so that my parents would give me a certain amount of freedom, and that was the return. So it was, you know, with that background, but I was college bound. I think as we talked earlier today when in discussing, you know, what is it that helps kids stay focused and through school. I knew I was going to college, and New Mexico State provided a perfect opportunity to stay home. I know that's important to a lot of folks, and it was very important to me also to be able to stay close to home, get a very good education, and fulfill what I thought and my family expected would be that next step post-high school, was to go to college and get a degree and get a job. And as I was telling Gabe here, I did not intend to go into engineering. I actually planned to be a doctor. And so when I talked to my parents about that, I was going to go do some pre-med type of curriculum. And remember my dad saying basically, well, that's great, and I hope you're successful in going to med school, but all I know is if you get an undergraduate degree, I want you to be able to get a job as soon as you graduate, if that's the route, if you're going to change your mind. And so he said, pick whatever engineering discipline it is, it's your choice, but you'll be an engineer. So I said, oh, chemical is probably the closest to what I want to do, and then I found out I couldn't stand the sight of blood, and you know, the rest is kind of history there. So that's really, I kind of fell into it. But it was a good curriculum. It did give me confidence that I could get a job going out, and there's a lot of opportunities, as the students here know, about interning once you're in a scientific curriculum. There's a lot of demand, and people want to attract you. And you know, I did an internship with IBM and got confidence that you know, I was learning and I was getting skills that were valued in the workplace. And from that standpoint, I went out after I graduated and worked in private industry for 4 years.
Yeah, and then you made an interesting transition, one I talk to students a lot about, and you went to the University of Colorado and ended up getting your JD in law. So tell us about that transition and how your background in chemical engineering played a role in helping through that process and that transition.
Absolutely. I think, well, a couple of things. I did get interested in the law as an undergraduate. I took some business law courses as part of my humanities requirements, and so I was interested in general, but I hadn't really planned on going back to law school. I went to work for GE in one of their manufacturing management training programs, an excellent training program where you have an opportunity to try different locations and different businesses within GE, and I ended up in Denver working in the power generation services businesses. And because it's a smaller operation, in addition to some of the engineering work I was doing, I was also running some of the environmental programs for GE. And I did notice that I had to do what the lawyers were telling me to do, and They seemed to have a lot more power in the company than I did as the project engineer, so I kind of decided if you can't beat them, join them. So I looked into going into law school, and I do think, and it worked out to go to University of Colorado, which had an excellent environmental natural resources program, one of the tops in the country, and that's how I got into this line of work. But I do think the engineering curriculum is very similar to a legal study. I think it's almost, you have rules, formulas, you apply them to solve a particular problem. It's very much of a similar problem-solving exercise. And so I think the curriculum, engineering-wise, helped me greatly think like a lawyer in the way law schools teach towards that. I think, for writing skills were something I had to work on because I hadn't written that much as an undergrad engineering student. But overall, I think it was very tailored to the engineering curriculum to me going to law school.
I'm sure you scared the hell out of them too, right? They're not used to having to deal with a chemical engineer in their classes.
Probably sounds more impressive than it is.
Well, any advantage we can get over the lawyers, right? That's
exactly.
Right. That's right. So, prior to your position as Deputy Secretary, you spent a number of years as the Commissioner for the Bureau of Reclamation, and then prior to that as counsel here working with the legislature with, it was Senator Bingaman,
yes,
right? That's correct.
Senator Bingaman from New Mexico.
And I know you worked extensively on water rights issues, which to us in New Mexico, and it's very big, and especially dealing with international affairs and some of the border situations. So if I'd like to get your perspective on just the importance of water, because this is something we talk a lot about within SACNAS, and just as a global issue, and definitely when it hits our economy, and the relation of water rights and how that affects our communities in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. I think water is one of those issues that keeps emerging as a very high priority, and it hasn't always been that way. I used to, as you mentioned, I worked for Senator Jeff Bingaman, who was chairman of the U.S. Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee, which has jurisdiction over energy and natural resource issues, including water resources. And I remember at times, the energy discussions around this country always tend to dominate a lot of the natural resources issues. I used to laugh that the only people that cared about the water issues on the committee were Mike Connor and Jeff Bingaman. So at least I had the chairman who was very interested. But I think a lot of that has changed over the last 5-6 years. In particular, water resources are one of our most stressed resources. The challenge that exists overall just from increasing populations, particularly in arid parts of this country like the West. It's a very attractive place to live, but there's obviously a challenge with respect to water resources. As we move forward as a country, we're depleting our aquifers. We're recognizing some of the issues from an environmental perspective that we didn't take care of historically, which we need to take care of now, and how that's important culturally. It's important to our overall quality of life. And you throw into that recent droughts and the issue of climate change and the very strong impact that that's having on water resources. And you have now a situation where at the highest levels of this government, people are talking about water resource issues and sustainability and the investments we need to make to strike the right balance sustainably, but also to ensure communities have access to clean water supplies, and that we can continue industries like agriculture that can not only continue to produce for our country, but can help feed the world. And I tend to be very long-winded when it gets to water, but I would just say there's not a whole lot, even at my level as Deputy Secretary, my interactions with the President of the United States are pretty fleeting and not an ongoing relationship. But the times I have had substantive conversations with the President and meetings, usually water has been at the heart of the subjects. He's very engaged, particularly given the drought in California, the implications long-term in this country if we don't take care of our water resources.
It's very important, and I know it resonates with our community, as that's where a lot of our populations are, and this affects them daily. So now that I've used up my presidential privilege in being able to talk with the Deputy Secretary, we have some questions prepared from SACNAS that they wanted to ask you. So I get the pleasure of asking you
I
about
like that.
SACNAS, and you're a SACNista now, so you can you'll be taking that badge with you. And so our first question comes from the National Congress of American Indians. And Indian Affairs is unique as one of the only people serving bureaus within DOI. What investments has DOI made in supporting the capacity of tribes to measure the Indian population?
It's a great question, and I should note Suzette Kimball, who is the director of the USGS, is here somewhere. There she is. Terrific acting director who we hope will be confirmed by the U.S. Senate very soon. There's a saying in USGS: you can't manage what you don't measure, and it comes out of the scientific community, but it's very true with respect to the dynamics of the Indian community's population being one, but other metrics that we need to better understand to be able to address some of the really critical issues that exist in Indian country. And it starts with understanding the dynamics of population, the economic indicators within that population, unemployment, a lot of parameters that we haven't done a good job over time measuring. So we've got an initiative in our budget. It's a long-standing a need that we've had, but we've increased our resources of about $12 million in this year's budget cycle to really focus on how Bureau of Indian Affairs, Department of the Interior can partner with the U.S. Census Bureau, how we can do better sampling, how we can get better results in understanding the population dynamics within Native communities, and also how we can increase our internal capacity in the Department of the Interior to work with tribes and build their capacity to really ensure that we're reporting when the census that comes about every 10 years, that we get people responding to the census, that we have folks checking the information so that we can get a better understanding of the population as well as the indicators within that population that'll help us address economic needs, housing needs, all the type of issues that are just critical to yield better results from a government standpoint for Native American people.
Absolutely, and I think that leads to the next question, really, and answers part of that is, how does DOI support and envision supporting Native American scientists in these initiatives? And I think you answered that partly by investing in the communities, but yeah, give us your take on that.
Absolutely, and there's a lot going on in this space of how do we support Native American scientists, and it starts overall with our goal to just do our part in promoting overall STEM education in this country for the benefit of this country overall. And that's an important thing we need to do. It's an ever-increasing globally competitive environment for our businesses, and we think that there's great value in bringing diversity to the whole STEM education curriculum. And we're self-serving to some extent. At the Department of the Interior, we have an aging workforce, and we have lots of issues that with all of our different bureaus where we need to have new blood, new graduates coming in with a technical and scientific background to help us fill our workforce needs. So we come at it from the nation needs more scientists, engineers. We at the department need more scientists, engineers. So we want to promote that goal overall. And we understand that particularly in the Native American community, we at the department serve Native American communities. It's a great place where we can promote not only that curriculum, the need for the scientists and engineers, those with technological backgrounds, but we can actually bring them in and have them work and provide back to their own communities. So we have just a plethora of programs overall that we have at the department. I was just going to give some examples here. One of them is obviously the partnership that we have with your organization and that we are applying over the last several days, which is particularly USGS has been doing this for quite a while, but we've had other bureaus within the department, Fish and Wildlife Service, BLM National Park Service, of course the Bureau of Indian Affairs, here in the exhibition hall doing recruiting, making job offers available. USGS in particular, I think, is looking at its mapping program and brought opportunities to bear to try and convince students to apply for those opportunities and hopefully make some hiring decisions. And I didn't realize, but some of the other interior bureaus did too. So there is highlighting the opportunities that exist within our department, actually trying to use opportunities like this to identify specific jobs and recruit people. USGS in particular does a lot of activities all across the country to try and really promote opportunities within our programs to develop scientific folks within the Native American community. We fund instructors for our BIA Water Resource Technical Training Program, which has been a long-established program, which has, I think, been very successful over time, given the importance of water to Native American communities. Once again, several of our USGS offices have partnered up with tribes to develop very innovative summer science camps to try and promote specifically the opportunities that exist and scientific curiosity programs that'll bring that out for students who are particularly indicating some interest in that area. We have established over the last 5 years a number of very highly functioning Department of the Interior USGS science centers across the country. One of them in the South Central United States has done a very good job of having tribal liaisons, of going the whole route from providing internships to identifying curricula that can be used. We have, I think the South Central Climate Science Center is developing a climate change symposium that it can bring to tribal colleges and universities to kind of promote interest in what's happening on our landscape and to do our role in educating and providing training to students who are interested in that area. The Bureau of Indian Affairs has increased its budget to try and partner up with tribal natural resource programs themselves and create opportunities for internships. So I think we recognize the overall goal, we try and promote that, but we're also on the ground in a number of locations trying to do what we can to inspire students to want to pursue STEM careers, to do outreach so that they understand the opportunities that they have, particularly with the Department of the Interior, and provide opportunities to get training, to get experience that will help them land jobs wherever they might be. They will be great contributors to our country no matter where those jobs are, even if they want to work at Intel, who apparently is really going to compete with us for these great students. But I think it's in that inspire, outreach, and providing opportunities that we're trying to make the case for STEM activities.
Wonderful. You know, and as you mentioned, the reach of the Department of the Interior is tremendous, and this is something that, you know, for the students, I hope you were listening. We're getting old everywhere, so we need you to come up the ranks because we need you to take these jobs. So as you see, there's jobs for you there, and don't think that these jobs don't pertain to you. So think about those career opportunities. So the next question comes from the American Indians in Higher Education Consortium. And what do you consider the Department of Interior's most promising and effective strategies for working with the tribal government? So you mentioned some of these for further economic progress, while remaining good stewards of the land. And I think that second part's the idea that considering the stewardship of the land.
Absolutely. I think the best policy that we have at the Department of the Interior is one that promotes tribal self-determination, tribal sovereignty, but also recognizes that we have a role at the department to help tribes build capacity. There are 566 federally recognized tribes across this country, and including Alaska. Some of those tribal governments are very, very sophisticated and have just done a tremendous job. Others are still working through the opportunities and the governance structure with their respective tribes. So there's a whole diversity there. But our goal, and the issue with, the federal approach to dealing with Native Americans has a long and sordid history, quite frankly. And it's been one where we've constantly changed policy, treaties, reservations, support to termination, assimilation, where we actively tried to break those cultures, thinking assimilation was the best approach, which was a disastrous federal policy. I think over the last 4 decades plus, we have come upon a policy of promoting tribal self-determination, respecting tribal sovereignty. And from that standpoint, that seems to be the policy that is working. I think some tribes are greatly prospering. That doesn't mean that, as we see it, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the Department of Interior, and the rest of the government should be very supportive of tribes as they carry out that self-determination and make decisions how to best use their homelands. But if we do that, what we're trying to do is support them, help build capacity, and work with tribes in a supportive role where we can get over the distrust that has existed for a long period. And that distrust is unfortunately something that has come about because of that sordid history between the federal government and tribes. I think I give President Obama, Secretary Salazar, Secretary Jewell, as somebody with a Native American heritage who started my career, particularly from a legal standpoint, working in federal Indian law, it's been a joy to work for an administration that has actively tried to change at all levels our relationship with those tribes. There's been a lot of litigation against the federal government. We've settled over 80 tribal trust suits against the federal government, trying to get past that to restore tribal lands. There's just a series of initiatives that I think we've been successful in turning around that relationship so it's one of support, respect, partnership, and if we can do that, then I think we're going to be more effective in reaching out to tribal youth in particular, trying to promote scientific, technological curriculum, interest in that area, so that we can continue to build capacity, so that we can employ those folks or help educate them in a way that they can return back to their communities. And I understand it's a hugely important, particularly in the Native American community, to give back to their particular community. So whatever we can do to train folks, employ them, give them experience, we'd love to keep them, but if they go back to the communities, it's a cycle that I think that we need to continue on as a federal government. And I think we're making progress. And for once, I think we need to stay the course with respect to our federal Indian policy, not change it, because I think we're on the right track.
I couldn't agree more. That investment of support is critical, and we see the same thing in the STEM sectors, and so I applaud you for those efforts. The last question comes from our Native American Affairs Committee here in SACNAS, and this is, how can you envision SACNAS partnering with the DOI to help improve the connections within tribes and tribal colleges? And along with that, are there programs that the students and postdocs can become involved in to help with these education and literacy issues that you speak to?
I think there's a lot of areas that we can partner up with SACNAS, and I know we've done that for several years, but even this year, I know USGS in particular has been partnering up for a while, but I think this year we've brought more resource to this conference and had more of a presence. And so just this opportunity and other opportunities at your meetings to be available to highlight the opportunities that exist within the department, I think is a good place just to do that outreach and to highlight those opportunities. I think that's one area. I understand SACNAS has a great college preparedness program. And I think that's incredibly important. And I think we need to figure out how to tap in and have agreements in place where we can support your efforts in college preparedness activities. And then I think with respect to internships and those opportunities that we can provide, that we can work with SACNAS to highlight those opportunities and use you all as a vehicle to make folks aware. I was impressed with the numbers for registration students. Your outreach is just incredible. And so we need to tap into that, make sure we understand our opportunities. And I think overall, we're trying to increase our scholarship programs at the Bureau of Indian Education. We've made investments. We have a land buyback program that was part of our settlement of some longstanding litigation, the Cobell settlement. We're reinvesting some of those proceeds into a scholarship fund. That's one area that we can work with you all to make sure that we're also providing opportunities to go to school to involve more kids in the STEM education. So I think your network, our resources, working more together, there's plenty of opportunity there.
Well, I tell you, that's music to my ears. And, you know, I want to see the term SACNAS infiltrate the vernacular of the Department of the Interior. And so that's wonderful. Well, I just wanted to thank you. I can't thank you enough for taking the time to come and participate in this fireside chat with us and provide this opportunity for our students to hear about the tremendous work of the Department of Energy, and also to thank you for representing our communities the way you do on a daily basis in your efforts. So let's give a round of applause to Deputy Director, Secretary Mike Connor. Thank you.
Thank you. A lot of fun.